All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. We'll get started in about a minute. So please stay put. Thank you. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Amy Sanchez. I am the grants manager at the College of Science and Math at UVI, and I work with the Emerging Caribbean Scientists Program. We're very excited about the symposium today. It's our first time doing a virtual symposium, so please bear with us and be patient as we manage this new experience. To get started, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bowen, who will give us a brief introduction.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Diana Bowen, and I work in the College of Mathematical Sciences, Science and Mathematics, in the Department of Mathematical Sciences. And I am so excited to be part of this year's symposium. And we will have 8 student presenters in this session. And what they'll be presenting on is STEM education and social science research. And we'll be using the same structure throughout the presentations. And so each student will be presenting their work for their summer research project. And then after that, at the conclusion of each piece, we will have time for questions. And then we'll also have time for some overall questions at the end of the session. And the presentations will be about 7 minutes. So that allows about 2 to 3 minutes for questions. And we ask that all of you that have joined us for today to please make sure your mics are muted throughout our presentations.
All right. So the first presenter for today is Lori Armstrong. And we've been told to be very strict with the schedule. So her presentation will not start until 1:10 exactly. And so we have Dr. McHale here. So if Dr. McHale, you want to share some thoughts with the students maybe in the meantime while we wait?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Camille McHale, and I'm provost at University of Virgin Islands, and I'm so excited to be here. It was really difficult having it this way. I love it because I'm going to hear like 7 in-depth presentations, but it makes it so that I can't get to everyone. But I just want to let you know I chose to come to this session because it's kind of a new area of research for me, STEM education and social science research. So I'm really super excited that so many of you students are getting a little bit of an entree or a little bit of a taste of what STEM ed research is. So thank you. I have a few favorite days at UVI and research symposium, whether it's summer or fall, that's one of them. So Amy, Ms. Sanchez, I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done to organize this. And students, knock us dead. We're ready for you.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So in the meantime, while we just wait these 5 minutes, be aware that there are other concurrent sections taking place in other disciplines, and each guest is allowed to switch between sessions. The abstract book has the detailed schedule with all the sessions, all the student names and their presentation titles. So if you're looking through the abstract book and you see there's another session that you're really interested in, feel free to switch at any time. We won't take it personally. And if, what else? If there's any questions, please put it in the chat and we'll move forward with that. So our first presentation is by Laurie Armstrong. And so she has a pre-recorded video that I will play. And after the pre-recorded video, she is here with us and she will be answering any questions from the audience at that time. Okay, so in the meantime, I'm just gonna share some slides. It'll have some acknowledgements and the schedule with the student names for the other sessions. And I'll play a little music in the meantime while we wait, okay? Thank you all. Laurie's video.
Good afternoon. My name is Laurie Armstrong.
All right, so can everyone see the screencast with pilot study? Let me know in the chat. Great, thank you. So this is Lori Armstrong's presentation. I'll play the video. And please confirm if you can hear the audio.
And today I'll be speaking on my pilot study of taking the English proficiency exam during English 201. The EPE is a written 90-minute essay examination, 500 to 600 words, multi-paragraph argumentative essay in response to a specific question. These essays are administered by the English department and evaluated by a committee of faculty from all the University of the Virgin Islands colleges and schools. Passing it is required by every undergraduate degree at UVI. Although it does not count as an actual course, it can be registered through your advisor or online university portal. UVI wants to ensure that its graduates are proficient at writing proper English. The English proficiency exam is a mechanism in which UVI has chosen to determine students' English proficiency. Students are permitted to take the EPE after successfully completing English 201 or their certification by an advisor. UVI has offered the EPE in the fall and spring semesters and now the summer. The pilot was conducted in spring 2017 that allows students enrolled in English 201 to take the EPE. To the time the EPE is taken and which campus it is taken on predict the student's performance. The significance of my study is to examine whether taking the EPE during or after English 201 makes a difference in the student's EPE score and determine if the location of the campus also plays a factor in the student's EPE score. To grade or rate the scoring of the EPE, they focus on the 6 dimensions of writing: focus, support, organization, use of English, sentence structure, and mechanics. There are 2 raters that score the essays each from 0 to 6, and the total score is from 0 to 12. A total score of 8 or more is considered to be passing. Secondary research data was received from St. Croix on April 7, 2017, and from St. Thomas on April 13, 2017 from Dr. Combi to my advisor. The revised EPE rating scale was given to my advisor by Dr. Combi on June 20, 2018. Out of the 118 students, only 102 had viable data. This is because when the data was sent from St. Croix, we were able to get the student ID numbers, but when it was sent from St. Thomas, they only had the last name and first initial. As you know, many people have the last name and same initial. This caused a little bit of problems, and we're only able to have 102 participants with viable data. So the first graph we have here, you see number of participants by campus and time of EPE. For St. Croix, those who took the EPE during 201, it was 18. After English 201, there were 45, and there was a total of 63. Then for St. Thomas, those who took the EPE during English 201 was 14. After English 201 was 25, resulting in a total of 39. 63 plus 39 equals 102 participants. On the second graph you see here, it is just a beautiful visual of the same information that was on the chart before. The mean, the median, and standard deviation of the EPE score was calculated with a mean of 8.09, a standard deviation of 1.9, and n equals 102 participants. As you can see here, there are no 7s. This is because there is never a final score of 7. When an essay gets a 7, it means that one reader has failed it and the other reader passes it. It then goes on to a third reader, and then the final score will be the 2 that agreed, and the essay is either pass or fail. So that's why there are no 7s. But there seems to be an abundance of the score of an 8, which is 36 participants, then an abundance of 9, which is about 18 participants. And as you can see, only 4 participants got the highest score of 12. A Pearson product moment correlation was conducted to determine whether the two independent variables, the time the EPE was taken and the campus, have a relationship with the dependent variable, which is the EPE performance. Based on the mathematical equation, the time the EPE was taken and campus showed no statistical significance. Then a regression analysis was used to determine if the regression equation is significant. The equation will determine whether, where, and when the EPE is taken predicts the score of the EPE. A regression equation was found with an R-square of 0.029. The time the EPE was taken and the campus were both not significant predictors of the EPE score. Since the Pearson product moment correlation with the regression analysis mathematical equation showed no statistical significance, there is much to be discussed. Variables that should be investigated are sex, ethnicity, EPE results before 201, and teaching styles. These teaching styles include authority, demonstrator, facilitator, delegator, or hybrid. They should also make the EPE pretest a requirement. For right now, it is only an opportunity or it's optional, but they should definitely make a requirement to see if maybe the pretest can predict the scores on the EPE. Other pilot tests should be conducted to determine the efficacy and efficiency of using methods other than essay writing, such as degree-specified essays or portfolios graded by faculty in the student's field. Right here we have a picture of the institutional pairs and aspirational pairs. My ideas, such as the degree-specific essays or portfolios, came from my background information about these certain schools. These schools have different ways of grading English proficiency, and we should also look into that. Here are my references. Thank you, and are there any questions?
All right. Well, at this moment, we'll open up the floor for any questions. Feel free to post it on the chat, or if you raise your hand, maybe we can call upon you to ask your question. So just to get started, Lori, if you could talk a little bit, what was the most surprising result for this summer?
Good morning. My name is Laurie Armstrong, and I really thought that maybe the campus or even the score or even the time taken would have made a difference. But the fact that it didn't, it actually really surprised me.
And Lori, this is Dr. Bowen. You have a question in the chat, and it asks, did the research consider interrelator reliability?
Can you please explain interrated reliability, please? Sorry.
Sure. The question is asking, when you coded these results, did you code with someone else? And if so, were you coding the results the same way?
Yes, I was with my advisor when we put the results together. If that's what you're asking me.
Yes, and do you have a sense of if you all were able to code the same way throughout the project, and that you had agreements across your coding?
Yes, because for the for a time such as before English 201 and after English 201, it was coded as 0. It was coded as 1 and 2. So everything kind of had a coding to it before we even started the process of analyzing.
Great, thank you, Lori. And your final question is, what did you find out about the institutional peers? Do they have similar tests?
What I did find out is that most of these universities do not have an actual English proficiency test. They only have one for those who are from other foreign countries. But I realized that many of them focus on intensive writing. Like they may have a class, for example, they may have any type of class, maybe a psychology class or a class in their degree, and they would ask them to write a paper, and then they would use that paper to determine the English proficiency instead of having a whole test.
All right, thank you, Lori. So we have to move on to keep with the schedule. The next presenter is Judy. So I am going to play her recording so we can move along with the schedule. Thank you, Lori. Give me 1 second while I play and share.
My mentor, Diana Bauer. We work together. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Judith C. Rodriguez, my mentor, Diana Bauer. We work together in this research project called Exploring How STEM Instructors at a Public University in the Caribbean Transitioning to Online Teaching. Introduction. So online teaching is now a more common method of instruction. We see there is a high demand of offer as well as the demand in the students wanting to get online courses, college, undergraduate, graduate programs. COVID-19 led to an abrupt transition to online teaching, which is what we are witnessing and we went through. It was a difficult time, so we actually have to embrace. What are the strategies and resources instructors use with online teaching? So we wanted to find out what are these strategies, resources, perhaps tools that they are using which are working for certain teachers. What are the challenges that STEM instructors face with online teaching? Perhaps we wanted to find out this, what are those challenges that they are facing in terms of the hard skill, like in the connection issues, internet issues, as well as the soft skills. Maybe they don't have the right attitude. Where is the motivation? Things like that. What comparisons can we make between the face-to-face and online teaching experiences? So we wanted to contrast those to the in-classroom versus the online teachings. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the advantages and disadvantages and so forth? The main objective is to analyze the strategies and resources used by the STEM instructors. So once again, we wanted to see what are exactly the strategies, tools, techniques that are working, to identify the factors that contribute to or disrupt online learning and teaching. So we wanted to see exactly what is disrupting, what is working for some teachings, how do they can provide online teaching smooth or effective. To find possible solutions to improve online teaching in higher education STEM. So the idea is once we identify all these fallacies and factors, then we want to see these are the solutions based on our data, information collection, and of course on our results. That the idea is to provide them so we can improve or facilitate to eventually get a more effective online teaching or transitioning to online teaching. Why does this research need IRB approval? Well, this is a human subject, so of course there are participants which are living individuals, which you're going to be involved, they are going to be interacting. IRB, the Institutional Review Board, he protects the rights of human subjects. There is actually very meticulous institution on this matter. They also analyze and review the risk-benefit analysis into like whether it's funded, unfunded program. They wanted to make sure everything is ethically conducted. Literature review. What is the history of distance education, including online teaching and learning? So actually, online teaching is literally distant education. It starts as a correspondence in Great Britain and escalate and went into internet, and now we have an online teaching, which is basically a trend. How is online learning alike and different than face-to-face learning? So this contrast again, we wanted to analyze it, we wanted to see what are the pros and cons. why are implementing online learning and how it has been successful? So it had been said that because of the convenience, the practicality, and the flexibility, this is one of the tools, and actually a method of instruction which has been successful. Many colleges are embracing it, offering programs, as I mentioned, graduate, undergraduate, graduate, and master's, so forth. What pedagogical techniques are using for online teaching? So we wanted to find out what are those techniques that in terms of the pedagogical concept or perspective, like the assessment plans, perhaps, online checking and tracking learning progress, things like that. Methods. So the participants are STEM instructors in higher education in the context of online investigation of STEM faculty at a Caribbean university. We want to be focused on this region. The research questions: how do STEM instructors' resources, tools, and strategies, experiences, and belief about teaching play a role in teaching courses online and transitioning to teach courses online? So the mix of the hard skills, soft skill, the belief, experiences, all these play an important role, and we wanted to study and find more in depth. Mixed methods, exploratory surveying, so which is the 45 questions, so it's going to take approximately 30 minutes, which includes multiple choice, larger scale questions for answers, straightforward, which is pretty simple. The research project components, since I mentioned before, is an IRB. It needs the IRB approval, so we have at the moment is part, I would say approved, so we had it in green that you could see them, determining the goal, that's pretty simple, formulating the research objectives, determining the research rationale, so forth. So this part is the first part, one of the components of the project. So next would be the steps after the IRB approval, which is collecting the data, analyzing the data, validating, legitimating the data. And as you notice here, it's on red, is because it still needs that approval. So we actually can move forward in our project because we can't do anything as long as we have the IRB completely approved. What were the challenges to obtain an IRB? This was a long process. It was a training. I required documentations. There was some additional information about benefits, and it was a 14 modules. We need to rearrange our concepts for move the COVID-19 information for the correct header. So these are some points that were related to this training. And the potential contribution of our research. So with our research, we really wanted to see what are those techniques, what are the experiences, what are those challenges that this teacher face, and finally, to describe the best practices so the teachers offer a better teaching, online teaching. And this is my acknowledgement, my name here, my email. Thank you so much for listening.
All right. So thank you to Judith. She is here to answer any questions from the audience. Feel free to use the chat. And if you could raise your hand, and maybe we'll call upon you to ask your question. So Judy, it's the same question for you. What do you think, out of all the results from your project, what was most surprising to you?
Well, that would be an ideal point to make. However, as I mentioned in the presentation, our project is subjected to the IRB approval. So we hadn't done to that part yet. We can collect data. We can't actually submit the survey yet because it still is partially approved. So we just basically work or focus on the main points, which is like, formulating the research questions, focusing the method, getting into the literature review, and so on. So we wanted to do that, of course, eventually, and hopefully in the during this fall, we wanted to complete this project because it seems it's interesting. for me, from my perspective.
And so, Judith, to build on that, what was the most interesting thing you learned from doing the literature review about online teaching?
I would say that the contrast of how it was versus from the perspective of the historical frame, I would say like, wow, how it evolved into this point that we have online teaching as we all witnesses, and evidently we see that is all our education system is relying on this. So I would say that I can imagine that how it was before in such a distant education with just correspondence, and then transition onto what we have today, which is our education relying completely on this method of instruction.
Thank you, Judith, so much for your presentation, and we'll be moving on to our next presentation now.
Thank you.
All right, so our next presenter is Isanika Charles, and she pre-recorded her presentation. So I'll pull that up for you right now. Actually, Isanika, I see you sent you're gonna do it live. So I'm gonna share your PowerPoint. And when you're ready to move on to the next screen, to the next slide, just say next, and I'll move the slides along, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So let me start the show so you can get started. I'm not sharing my screen.
I'm not seeing it yet.
Okay, sorry. Let me share my.
For me to share my screen?
No, I got it. I just needed to share. Do you see it now? Yes. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Isanika Charles. I'm a biology major here at UVI. My mentor name is Dr. Bernard Castillo, and my presentation is A Good Tude Makes the Future Smooth, Integrating Research to Improve Attitudes Towards Science. Next. Integrating research in classes has shown to increase positive attitudes towards science. I myself have found this to be true because in my science classes from this school year, having other means of teaching and integrating research or hands-on activities in the classroom has boosted my potential to learn and has made me a better student because of it. There is data showing that students gain the most from learning when they are taught by researchers and engaged in active research. So to go about our research, we collected surveys assessing the improvement of students' attitudes before and after applied research was introduced to the curriculum. And our hypothesis is if applied research is introduced to the curriculum, then students should show a more positive attitude towards science. Next. So to do this, we use an STEM survey, which stands for Students' Attitudes Towards Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics survey. And this is a survey specifically designed to collect data pertaining students' opinions or attitudes towards the STEM field. So we collected these surveys during the allotted time from Chemistry 151 to 152, fall of 2018 and spring 2020. On the right, I have the 8 questions of the survey, and students could, first is a Likert survey, and students could either select strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, or strongly agree for any one of the 8 questions. And for the pre-survey, we allowed the students to take this survey before applied research was integrated into the curriculum, and also we allowed the students to take the survey after the graded research was applied research was integrated into the curriculum. This wasn't mandatory, and it was totally anonymous. And to collect and to analyze the data, we use SPSS analysis using the Whitney-Mann test. Next. So here I have my charts of my results. For the pre-survey, we have on the y-axis the 8 questions that I mentioned, and on the x-axis, I have the percentages of students. So for the first question, I am sure I could do advanced work in science. Most students agreed, so they have a very high percentage of agree, and you can see that it's color-coded in the yellow here. And for post-survey, students agreed, a lot of students agreed with the question, I know I can do well in science. 87 students in total participated in the survey. Next. Here is the results of our statistical analysis. On the left, I have those 8 questions. On the right, in the first column, I have the p-values for chemistry 151, chemistry 152, and both of them combined following. We found a statistical difference in the question, I will need science for my future work. Overall, we didn't find a statistical difference in both classes. Next. So in conclusion, we found a statistical difference in career-based questions. Only students in 152 were impacted. There was no impact made on students in chemistry 152. And we can hypothesize that this may be because chemistry 151 is the first class that's introduced to students on a science paradigm. However, there is no clear trend to what changes in attitudes could be proven in this experiment. Next. So I would like to thank the Immersion Caribbean Scientist Program, my funding source, College of Science and Mathematics, and the students in their allotted time. Thank you. Do I have any questions?
All right, so the floor is open. You can put your questions in the chat or raise your hand to ask your questions, and you'll be called upon. Dr. Stanford, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I was wondering, this was an opinion survey. This was all based on opinion surveys, right?
Yeah.
So can you think of ways to measure the students' skills?
We would have to use a different type of survey to determine that.
You think a survey would be a good way to do that, or use your imagination?
I definitely think that if we were to test the skills of students, it would have to be on a rubric, based on like a rubric system.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the progression of each student, we can determine whether or not the specific aspect of research or science or STEM would be good, and we can determine their attitudes towards that.
Okay, thank you. A rubric sounds like a great idea.
Good afternoon, Asonica. You have a question from Dr. Gwinnell in the chat, and it says, you may remember the STEM survey for Science 100. Do you have hypotheses about what questions, if any, might show a significant difference for this intro class of both science and non-science majors?
Okay, for both science and non-science majors, I think the most neutral question you can ask is if I know I can do well in science, or another question might be if I would like science or if I think that science could be a part of my future. And for that one, we saw a significant difference. So depending on depending on the likes of that person or where they deem themselves going in the future, those two questions could apply to both science and non-science majors.
Thank you, Isonica, so much for your presentation and thoughtful answers. And we'll move on to our next presentation now.
Excellent. So our next presenter has a recorded video, is Miss Melissa Ferreras. Give me 1 second while I pull up her presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Ferreras, and my mentor is Dr. Chris Play. My research project is analyzing students' attitudes towards STEM. Problem and research question. The problem is that too many high school students in the USVI divert from STEM fields. This can be bad for their socioeconomic growth of the territory. Students' attitudes towards STEM is a better predictor of enrollment in college science than academic achievement. So a student may have good grades in math and science, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pursue a career in STEM. So this is why we look at their attitudes towards STEM. So students' attitudes towards STEM are not static and can be improved. Research question. How do STEM research activities motivate or impact a student's attitudes towards STEM in the U.S. Virgin Islands? Research design. So I'm going to be using the STEM survey. It is a popular validated instrument designed to measure changes in students' attitudes, confidence, and interest in STEM careers. Changes in the STEM results pre and post an activity measure the impact of the activity on the student's attitudes. So the strategy is to analyze pre and post STEM tests to see how research activities impacted attitudes. So I'm going to be using the 2018, the 2019, and the 2020 pre and post summer research camp surveys provided by the Department of Education as my data sources. Data description. So the Virgin Islands Department of Education Summer Research Camp on St. Croix held a 5-week intensive summer research program where students are paired with a research teacher. Each research group studies a different STEM project, all of which are supposed to be community-based and inquiry-based. So this is an example of one of the questions on the survey. Do you plan to go to college? So these are the results on the pre-test and on the post-test. Results on the summer camp. So this graph is the 2018 summer research camp results. So in the 2018, students reported significantly higher in the 21st century skills after the camp. So in the pre-test, the students' average was 3.63. And after the research camp, the students' attitudes increased to 3.94. There are also increases in math and science, but is not statistically significant. So these are the results from the 2019 and the 2020. The students' attitudes towards math stayed the same, and they had a slight increase, Other subjects had decreases but not statistically significant, but an indicative of an overall trend that the students' attitudes were decreasing. Results and interest in careers. So this graph shows the students' interest in different careers as an average of the 3 years. So from the pretest. So this shows that the pretest showed highest interest in medicine, engineering, and computer science. In 2018, there were mostly insignificant increases and some insignificant decreases. The 2019 and 2020, however, showed a general trend of a decrease in attitudes. Some statistically significant decreases after research camp was towards the computer science interest and environmental science. Other observations. Of the 113 students that listed specific colleges or universities that were thinking of attending, only 24% listed the University of the Virgin Islands. Students had high levels of interest in engineering, but their attitudes to engineering didn't reach as high. So as you can see in the prior graph, students had an interest, and 61% of the students had an interest in engineering, but the attitudes towards engineering wasn't that high. Attitudes towards math were consistently the lowest. About 84% of students want to go to college, but only 60% of the students want to take advanced courses in math and science. Moving forward. So moving forward, I plan to continue the research, plan a qualitative phase to help explain trends and find improvements that can be done with the program. So I plan to do interviews with students at the camp so that they can tell me about their opinions and what they think about the program. Also research various activities with hopes to improve students' attitudes towards STEM. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Chris Pliley, Dr. Michelle Bonnell, University of the Virgin Islands ECS program, and funding provided by the NSF HBCU UP ACE Implementation Project, the UVI Growth Model. Thank you.
All right, so that was Melissa's presentation. Melissa is here to answer any questions from guests.
Good afternoon, Melissa. Dr. Bowen here. I was wondering how you might be able to do further research on this trend that you noticed that the individual teacher and the project design are incredibly important. How might you start investigating that or looking into that?
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Ferraz. So going forward, I plan to go at least investigate a little with the summer camp and read about the projects that they're doing and see how the students' attitudes improve from the different activities.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? You feel free for any guest. You can put it in the chat and we'll read it out. If you have questions. So I see Dr. Castillo is asking, Melissa, were the changes in career in 2018 and 2019 driven by the theme those years?
So I really didn't get to look at the projects that were done that year, but I guess probably the projects that were done, it didn't have much of an influence towards those careers in 2018 and 2019.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, so if there are no other questions for Melissa, thank you so much. We'll move forward in the schedule to start Ariana's presentation. So give me 1 second while I put that up to begin. All right, so our next presenter is Ariana Athenes.
Good afternoon, my name is Ariana Athenes, and with my mentor, Dr. Noreen Michael, and to the grant support of the Building Students' Identities as Scientists, this summer we decided to look at the limitations of parental choice of preferred childcare facilities ages 0 to 5 in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Today, we'd like to acknowledge some key points being the background, our hypothesis, methodology, preliminary findings, implications, challenges encountered, and the next steps, and along with acknowledgements. A background or overview would include what is early childhood development. Early childhood development consists of physical, socio-emotional, cognitive, and motor development skills of children between the ages of 0 to 5. Under this also includes the development of their early childhood educational stage, and this is important to look at because this truly develops a foundation for a child's adult life. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, there are 3 childhood educational programs. That is also the background of my research, and this consists of the Head Start, Early Head Start, and licensed and private childcare facilities. Head Start is an early childhood educational program that receives federal funding to serve 894 children and families in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Early Head Start is the early educational program located only in St. Croix and administered by the Lutheran Social Services, and it is to serve 120 children, families, and pregnant women. The criteria for both these programs would include the income of the families, which would be $20,000 per year, the ages of the children, the composition of their families, which includes is it a 2-parent household versus a single parent, and the status of the child being considered. Is it returning or are they first-timers? Our third childcare facility that we're looking at, licensed and private childcare facilities, are not funded by the government. These sometimes include religious schools. An example would be St. Thomas Calvary Christian Academy in St. Thomas and in St. Croix Good Hope Country Day Preschool. In terms of public housing communities, in order to be eligible for them, the family's annual income must reflect the federal poverty guidelines, which states that it must be the income times the number of people in the household along with an unemployed persons within. From this, we developed our scientific question of, are there factors that limit parental choice of preferred childcare facilities for children ages 0 to 5 in the U.S. Virgin Islands? Our hypothesis is that there are factors that limit parental choice. The factors that we're using to support our hypothesis consist of proximity, finances, government benefits and subsidies, and a lack of public knowledge. In terms of proximity, we're documenting distances between public housing and early childcare facilities. In terms of finances, we look at annual household incomes. Can they afford to send their children to these schools? Government benefits and subsidies, which is the amount received going into the consideration of these facilities, and a lack of public knowledge. Parents do often lack the social networks needed to introduce them to these services. In terms of our methodology, we looked at more of a mixed method design, starting with a secondary data analysis, which was an analysis of previously existing information and data from the Caribbean Exploratory Research Center. And we're looking or focusing more on the capacity, amounts, and locations of these various facilities. Our second step was to use GIS mapping, which is a program more so used as a geographic information system to produce key visuals such as 2D or 3D maps. We can use GIS to manage, create, and attain data, which would in turn create a figure such as 2009 median household income located towards the right. This map was actually given to us from the U.S. Census Bureau, the USVI. Our next steps in terms of our methods would be a primary data collection and qualitative data, which would consist of a survey and interview, which would be short anonymous questionnaires or 30-minute in-person conferences with no more than 5 to 7 questions at max 20. Our goals of the survey and interview is to understand the parents' opinions on the care of their child receives, perception on early child care facilities, and personal limitations they feel exist within these programs. To the right is actually a sample survey that we're in the development of making. The results or inferred results that we're looking at in terms of proximity starts with the documentation of distances between public housing and early childcare facilities. In the Estate Bavonia apartments, which is one that we looked at, we noticed that there's 41% of the residents being children. And at this diagram now, which is an actual GIS map of the Estate Bavonia apartments enclosed in red, we saw that the Bavonia Head Start Center is actually enclosed and within close proximity of the actual Bavonia housing apartment complex. But on this map, there's no location of any private or parochial schools. So we still have to have more data to look at the proximal distances between them. In terms of finances, we looked at the annual household income and the early Head Start and Head Start criteria. And we noticed that Estate Bavonia apartments had an annual household income for their tenants of $19,000 per year. This does reflect their criteria guidelines. It does not exceed $20,000. But in terms of government benefits and subsidies, any amount received goes into their consideration. So if they receive any amounts from the special nutrition program and it exceeds it, they do not come within the expectation of the criteria. And finally, a lack of public information. From an analysis of articles conducted, we discovered that, according to Winkworth, that most parents simply did not know about these services because they had no assistance. In an hour-long interview conducted by the CERC staff to anonymous participants of the Department of Human Services, Speaker 2 did state that she does not think most individuals in the community know that these programs or information exist. Our recommendation of flyers, newscasts, and publications was recommended. So the goal of our research, broader impacts that we're looking to accomplish would be facilities expecting special needs, summer programs for 0 to 5-year-olds, and dual language learners. We're hoping that we can actually help in the assistance of creating more of these programs for students with actual issues and allowing dual language learners to have a faster learning rate. For summer programs, most parents do need assistance in dealing with younger children. Challenges encountered in their steps, there are a higher number of kids needing services than there are facilities serving them. We did not have enough time to complete this research, and we're hoping that our path towards completion would consist of completing this in time for AmberCram. I'd like to acknowledge the CERC team and my mentor, Dr. Noreen Michael, Dr. Letha Bowman, and Dr. Gregory Wanel of Emerging Caribbean Scientists Program, our grants, EBSCO host of the UVI, the DHS team, and the Housing Authority team. Thank you. At this time, I'll take any questions, and this is our contact information.
All right. So Ariane is here and available for anyone who has any questions. If you feel more comfortable, you can use the chat. Or if you raise your hand, we can call upon you to ask your questions. So I'll open the floor to anyone who has any questions.
Good afternoon. This is Dr. Bowen, and I was wondering if you could speak some about, now that you've learned about these challenges and barriers, have you thought about recommendations or solutions based on what you've learned?
Hi, good afternoon. So far, based on the research, some of the solutions and recommendations that I would like to include would be the better representation or acknowledgement of transportation systems in the Virgin Islands. Yes, although we do have safaris, some parents don't have the availability or time to hop on it, well, wait for safari first of all, which is about 5 to 10 minutes, drop the child and go to work if they are employed. So that was one that we noticed was transportation. I feel that this form of research could help with identifying that factor and helping in that way. And also, as stated in the broader impact section, the special needs. We feel that through this data and acknowledging these certain limitations, we can hopefully bring to them the concept of making these facilities more special needs acceptable, such as bringing down teachers that are actually capable of handling them, or even curving their ways to just accept them and I guess have patience with them.
Thank you, Ariana. Any other questions from anyone else? Well, with that, we do have to move on. It is 2, and our next presenter will be Angelisa Freeman. She has a recorded video that I will share, so I will put that up right now.
Good day, my name is Angelisa Freeman and my mentor is Dr. Michelle Guanel. My research is focusing on the challenging experiences centered around a hurricane for undergraduate students at the University of the Virgin Islands. The U.S. Virgin Islands experienced 2 major Category 5 hurricanes in 2017 within the span of 2 weeks. These hurricanes caused many damages and problems that negatively affected the lives of many. These individuals then had to learn and adapt to become much more resilient. In the Caribbean, Hurricane Gilbert's effects were so far-reaching that in 1988, it is remembered by the song entitled Wild Gilbert, composed by Lloyd Lovindeer. Lines from the song highlighted the trauma using metaphors and similes like wolf migrate without visa and dish takes off like flying saucer. Both the humor expressed through song and vivid images testifies to the fact that Caribbean life has indeed been adversely impacted by many hurricanes. My research question is asking what experiences are most challenging to students before, in terms of preparation, stocking up on non-perishable goods and water, during, having to evacuate and finding safe shelter, and after the hurricane in terms of recovery and restoration efforts to return the community to some sort of normalcy. Now, in my research, a phenomenological analysis of essays from 26 students was done, in which the students were part of the Science 100 course at UVI. In my research, I used codes developed by Dr. Guanel and UVI graduate Nalia Copeman for a book chapter manuscript titled A Course on Natural Disaster Gets Real, Living Impacts of Climate Change in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, this qualitative analysis was challenging because it involved interpreting people's works as common themes, which can feel a bit more subjective than a natural science study. Now, this slide is focusing on the challenges described by the highest number of students. Initially, the results, we had a total of 13 codes that were coded from the 26 essays. And from these 13 codes, a total of 7 were cited as the most challenging experience. So these challenging experiences are as follows. Number 1, adjustments. Now this is talking about the life alterations after the hurricane that differed from before the hurricane. Number 2, we have the lack of knowledge. Here we are talking about having little to no knowledge or experience about the hurricane, as well as underestimating the hurricane's damaging potential. Number 3, we have emotional state. Now, numerous essays mention various levels of fear and shock, as well as terror that were felt throughout the hurricane. 4, we have damage or impact. Now, this is including damages to homes, vehicles, telecommunications, infrastructure, and the environment. Then we have response to emergency. This refers to individuals having to brace doors and take shelter because their roof was gone. One essay stated, "My brothers were forced to take shelter underneath the sink." Now, we have emotional loss and physical loss. Physical loss is basically talking about the loss of possessions, while emotional loss is referring to the loss of lives. One individual stated, "My mom's friend lost her husband during the disaster, while many of my friends and relatives lost their homes." Last but not least, we have trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this theme is referring to the experiences that could be symptoms of trauma or PTSD. One essay stated, "I honestly thought I was going to die." These challenging experiences left an indelible mark on the lives of many individuals. Now, on this next slide, we are referring to or focusing on the top cited challenging experiences before, during, and after a hurricane. Now, on the x-axis, we have the challenging experiences, and on the y-axis, we have the number of students. Now, the top cited challenging experience before a hurricane was the lack of knowledge. Then, during the hurricane, we had two top cited challenging experiences. These are damage or impact or emotional state. And after the hurricane, the top cited challenging experience was emotional loss and physical loss. Now, overall, emotional loss and physical loss was cited as the most challenging experiences throughout the hurricane, both before, during, and after. This was the top cited challenging experience. Some recommendations to mitigate these challenges include building shelters and adjusting building codes to make the infrastructure more hurricane resistant, implementing hurricane drills, and having alternative communication techniques. Also, one can support the creation of emergency plans for each household, as well as providing adequate counseling services for persons who may be suffering from PTSD. In the future, my research would most likely be included in the book chapter Draft, A Course on Natural Disaster Gets Real, Living the Impacts of Climate Change in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Revisions are ongoing, and I will assist with the amendments as part of my directed independent research project this coming fall. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Michelle Guanel and Christopher Filey, as well as the University of the Virgin Islands and the ECS Honors Funds in allowing me to be a part of this program. Thank you.
All right. So we'll open up the floor for any questions for Ms. Freeman. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or if you raise your hand, I can call upon you. So, Ms. Freeman, can you talk about what was the most surprising result that you came up with?
Yes. In this research, the most surprising result for me was recognizing the lack of knowledge and experience individuals had when it comes to a hurricane. Most of them had never experienced a hurricane. It was their first time experiencing it, and a lot of them underestimated the strength, the direction, and the path of the hurricane.
Thank you. You would figure they would know, but it's surprising to know that some of us don't. Any other questions? Okay. So we will keep the program going. It's 2:09 right now. At 2:10, we'll have our next presenter. The next presenter is Bethany Good. So I'll pull up her presentation in just a second. Is Bethany here? Yes, Bethany's here, good. All right, so I'm gonna pull up her presentation.
Good afternoon. My name is Bethany Good. My mentor is Dr. Michelle Guanel. My research topic is preparing students and communities for natural hazards in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Science 100 is offered as a general education course for freshman students and is graduation requirement for majors and non-majors. The theme of hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, and tsunamis was developed after Hurricane Marilyn in the 1990s to improve disaster preparedness in the Virgin Islands. However, most recently, since Hurricanes Irma and Maria hit in 2017, the Science 100 class curriculum has shifted to incorporate learning about disaster recovery in the community and ways to be better prepared for these major hazards that often affect the Caribbean. So my research is focused on the question, based on the sources students use to learn about natural hazards that may impact the USVI and students' hurricane experiences, how well are they prepared for a hazard to occur? The data I'll be talking about in the next couple of slides is only taken from the Science 100 course on St. Thomas, and the project is approved by the Institutional Review Board. The data is also only from the fall 2019 semester, and Dr. Guanel de-identified the data before I looked at it. A disaster preparedness and safety survey was given to the students at the beginning and at the end of the semester. 83 students completed the pre-survey, 60 students completed the post-survey, and 53 students completed both. At the end of the semester, students were asked to write a hurricane essay. 26 of the students consented their essays to be used for research purposes. There were 9 true and false questions about disaster preparedness and safety on the survey. This one on the bottom is an example of one of the survey questions. I paired each student with a pre- and post-survey scores and performed a paired values t-test to compare the score correct from the 53 students who completed both the pre- and the post-survey. When I did this, I found that the p-value was very small, meaning that the likelihood of the increase in the amount correct was by chance was very slim. On the left here is the pie chart with the 7 categories that sort the students' responses to the question below that asks, what are the 3 sources of information you use to learn about possible natural hazards that may impact the VI? These are the top 3 categories that the students' answers fell into. The main response in the TV, radio, text programs was the news, which 16 people answered, and then 13 people replied with radio. The second category was websites, where 11 people just said the general answer of internet without specifying what sources on the internet they used. The third category was paper sources, where 9 people said the general answer of newspaper. In the post-disaster preparedness survey, the top 2 categories remained the same, but the third category changed from paper sources to disaster response and recovery organizations. In the TV, radio, text program, news and radio were about the same, but there was a 7% increase in the amount of people who said radio. The website category responses went from the general answer of internet, which only 2 people put this time, and instead they used a more reliable source like NOAA and the National Hurricane Center. The main difference between the 2 surveys was the disaster response and recovery organizations, where 4 people included by team in the response in the pre-survey, and in the post-survey, the amount jumped to 21 students.
So when you put the two pie graphs side by side, it's easier to see the difference between each of the categories. The main one being the disaster response and recovery organizations, which went from 5% to 25%. I used the McNemar's chi-square test, which is used to analyze tests performed before and after treatment in a population, where in my case, the treatment is the Science 100 class and the population is the 53 students in the class that completed both the pre and the post surveys. When I ran each test, I found that the two categories, disaster response and recovery organizations and paper sources, tested significant at very low p-values, less than 5%. So I can conclude that after students completed the Science 100 class, they are more likely to be better prepared for a natural hazard to occur based on the sources they use. The other 5 categories didn't test for significance, which is fine because within those categories, students included more specific and reliable sources. For the hurricane essay analysis, like I said before, 26 students consented their essays to be used. So far, I've only completed 18 of the essays while coding them, and the essays were coded using qualitative analysis to distinguish common themes among them. I found this article that talked about hurricane preparedness among older adults in Florida to help me define preparedness while I was coding the essays. One of the main themes I have noticed is where students talk about how they and the rest of the island underestimated the storm before it occurred. Also, I've noticed quotes like this one in the ending paragraph or ending sentence where many students included a statement about how next time they will be better prepared for a disaster to occur and that they will take it more seriously next time. So moving forward, I submitted a direct independent research proposal to continue my research this fall. If the proposal gets approved, I hope to develop a short hurricane preparedness document for students at UVI based off of the very long 2020 hurricane preparedness plan that UVI wrote up for this year, which I don't think is really clear to students. And next semester, I also hope to draft a publication with all of my research from this summer and from the fall semester. So lastly, I wanted to thank especially Dr. Guanell for being such a helpful mentor this summer and Dr. Piley, who helped me with this statistics part, and also to the ECS program coordinators. Thank you so much. And any questions?
All right. So if there are any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Bethany is here to answer any of your questions.
Good afternoon, Bethany. Dr. Bowen here. I'm wondering how you might synthesize across your results because you have both this pre and post surveys, but also the essays. And how do you think you might synthesize those results into something that, I don't know, something that would be useful that you learned from doing both of those analyses?
Good afternoon. I think that if I compared, looked at the students who completed the pre and post, and then if they submitted an essay and used that to see their hurricane experience and see if they were prepared and if their scores increased by the end of the class. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
Any other questions from any participants or the audience? So I'm wondering, Bethany, you mentioned that the UVI hurricane preparedness plan is confusing. Can you give 1 or 2 examples of things that were in there that might be confusing?
In the UVI preparedness plan, there's not really clear description of what students should do in case of a hurricane happens who are living on the campus. So it says that students who live on the island will go back to their homes, but people who aren't from the island, they have to go to the hurricane shelter, but it doesn't really say what they should pack or what they should have with them in case a hurricane happens. So that's one of the examples.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll move it right along to our next presenter for this session. It is a group, Leanne and Talia, and I will pull up the recording right now to play it for you. So this is our 8th presentation, and it'll be the final student presentation for this session.
Hi, good afternoon. Our research project this summer was an investigation of the voting system used in the U.S. Virgin Islands to elect the members of the legislature. This voting system is called block voting. My name is Talia Serrier, and my partner's name is Leanne Horsford, and our mentor this summer is Dr. Adam Parr. So block voting is one of several multi-member voting methods. This voting method allows for voters to select as many candidates as there are open seats. It is to be noted that in this method, it is not mandatory for voters to select a total of 7 candidates. Voters have the choice of picking and voting for as many candidates as they want, as long as they do not exceed 7. There are 10 states that utilize multi-member district voting. However, not all of them use block voting. These states are Maryland, Arizona, Washington, West Virginia, New Jersey, North and South Dakota, Idaho, New Hampshire, and Vermont. There are many disadvantages and advantages of using this voting method. Some advantages are that it is easy to implement and that it allows for more input for voters. And some disadvantages are that it allows for a small majority to choose all winners, as well as that representation is not proportional. So ethnic minorities and women representations become non-existent. So we had several research questions this summer. These research questions are, is there a pattern in the results of the elections from 2010 to 2018? Are there any differences between St. Thomas St. John District and St. Croix District? And if a pattern is found in the results of the previous elections, will we be able to predict the general distribution of votes in the 2020 general elections? This study was done by gathering data from the USVI Board of Elections website for the years 2010 to 2018. That can be seen at the top left. We analyzed this data from the previous or various years to determine if there was any relationships between the St. Thomas, St. John District and the St. Croix District in terms of the results from the elections as well as the general distributions of votes.
So when analyzing the certified election results, several key indicators were calculated and studied. 3 main areas that we focused on were the average votes per voter, the vote gap between the 7 and 8 candidates, and the percent of voters for the top 7 winners. To determine how voters utilize their votes, we looked at the average number of votes per voter in each district and for the entire territory. So as seen here in this graph, the blue was the St. Thomas St. John District, the red, the St. Croix District, and the yellow, the entire territory. It was found that there was no significant difference between the 2 districts, and the average number of votes per voter was always less than 7, with the average number of votes per voter in all districts each election year being consistently close to the overall average of 4.8. When looking at the vote gap in this graph over here, as you can see, the blue is the St. Thomas St. John District once again, and the red is the St. Croix District. So when we looked at these voting gaps between the 7th and 8th place winner, it was found that there was a difference between the districts. In the St. Croix District, there is a significant gap in the number of votes with an exception to the year 2016. As seen here in the year 2016, The St. Croix was a little lower. Like every year, like in 2010 it was 700 and change. In 2012 it was 600. In 2014 it was 800. But in 2016 it dropped to 91. So that's where we saw a significant gap as compared to the St. Thomas results, where the numbers were very small. This implies that there is more cohesion in the St. Croix district vote, and that small groups on St. Thomas could improve their results by utilizing fewer votes. We also examined the percent of voters for the top 7 winners in each district. To do this, we created box plot graphs. So to read a box plot graph, you look at the maximum up here and the minimum down here. So in our case, the maximum is the first place winner and the minimum the 7th place winner. And in between was the 2nd to 6th place winner. It was found that the first place winners in the St. Thomas district had more than 50% of the votes except for in the year 2014. Comparatively, in the St. Croix district, all but one election year had first place winners with close to or more than 50% of the winners. In both districts, the 7th place winners range from 26% to as high as 42% of the voters. This implies that there may be a large group that dominates the elections, as well as a sizable minority blocks who lack representation due to non-proportional nature of the block method. We can conclude that there are some patterns in the results of the elections from 2010 to 2018 and some differences between the St. Thomas St. John district and the St. Croix district results. We were unable to answer our research question number 3, which asks if a pattern is found in the results of the previous elections, will we be able to predict the general distribution of votes in the 2020 general election? In order to answer this question, more information would have had to be gathered and further research would have had to be conducted. This study that we conducted was more of a preliminary step for a much bigger study. In this study, we were able to obtain background information as well as preliminary evidence. From this, we were able to ask many questions and gather information that will one day be used in future research. So this research was funded by the NSF HBCU UpAce Implementation Project, the UVI Growth Model, Award number 1623126. We give special recognition to the Emerging Caribbean Scientists Program and the University of the Virgin Islands. And a special thank you to Dr. Adam Parr for being our mentor. If you have any more questions about this research, you can always contact us through email to me, Leanne Horsford, with my email right there, or to my colleague, Tulia Seri, her email right there. Thank you.
All right. So Talia and Leanne are here to answer any questions from the audience. Feel free to post your question in the chat or raise your hand and we can call you to ask your question. So Dr. Stoles raised his hand. You could go ahead and ask.
So my question is, I don't know if you had time to do this, but was there any statistical differences between, you know how you had the low percentages of some people winning? Is that just a normal thing that happens with that, or is there anything different about St. Thomas or St. Croix? Or maybe you didn't get a chance to sort of run that kind of question.
Hi.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So could you repeat what you're asking, Dr. Stoltz?
I guess I'm wondering if the results where you had the low, a lot of people who got into with a low minority, is that statistically significant, or could that just happen on any time you have this type of voting system?
I think that it just happened anytime that it was just the voting system.
Okay. It's something you could look into, in a future study.
Yeah, that would be something good to look into.
See if we're special.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. So I think we're at the end. We want to say thank you to all of the presenters for their presentations and their hard work. And thank you to all the mentors and all of the sponsors and supporters for this program. Thank you for your time, and if we'll stick around for a little bit longer, if there's any last minute questions or concerns overall for the program or for us. Again, my name is Amy Sanchez. My co-host is Dr. Diana Bowen. So thank you to the audience for being here. Thank you to all the students for their hard work and your presentations today were very excellent and very informative, and we appreciate your time. Thank you. There are other sessions that are still ongoing. So feel free if you have some time, if you wanna check out some of the other remaining student presentations, I encourage you to do so at this time. Thank you.